Hey, folks, Javen here. I want to give you a chance to be a part of this week's podcast. What an explosive podcast we have just for you. This will change and impact your life in ways you never thought possible. So get ready. It's time to do it now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another rendition of Do It Now. This is our weekly podcast, and I'm very, very excited. I have a very special guest. This is not only a great leader in the Miami area, he's not only an educator and just an all-around businessman, but he just so happens to be one of my nephews. Make some noise for Chris Clarke. It's in the house.
Thank y'all.
What's up, nephew?
So you missed one key part.
Uh-oh, what?
Favorite nephew.
Favorite nephew.
That's right. Yeah, you didn't get that in the notes. Huh?
Okay, behave now. I already told you what to do before we start. We're going to talk to you today. And you'll notice that Chris is not, he's on our, how many grandchildren are? About 50, 40, 30?
Too many.
Yeah, it's a lot. He's the first. We have second generation grandchildren now, nieces and nephews. Hopefully, y'all will get a chance to meet baby Riley.
Yes.
Yeah, she's the newest. I would say the newest addition.
I hope she is.
She's the you never know. She's the newest addition of the Campbell Clarke clan. Anyways, we're going to talk to you today about Chris. I want to talk about you're a successful. I watch your career. I watch your path. And I think it's a subject, in some ways it's a taboo subject, but I think it's something that we should talk about more. And that is the young black man in America choosing a path of business and corporate America as opposed to some of the typical sports, entertainment, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When I say that topic just off the top of my head, what's the first thing that comes to mind, or what do you think about just that topic alone?
No, first of all, I appreciate you picking that topic because I think it's timely, and I think having more conversations like this, black men having conversations like this, is really important. And I can tell you, a lot of times when I'm talking to young people, particularly young black people, they aspire to be what they see, and a lot of times, depending on the environment that you're in, they see things that are the anomalies, put it that way. So the basketball players, some of the actors, the TV lawyers, and some of those pieces, and teachers. But for some reason, they look at the educators as some of the harder roles that don't really get a lot of the glory. But growing up, a lot of the people I remember that had a huge impact on my life were faith leaders and also educators. So when you say that, I think of there's a whole world out there of things that successful, diverse men have done that some young people don't even know about.
So you think part of the problem is that they don't see it, because you can't duplicate what it is you don't see.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, and I think there's such a fixation on entertainment. Like entertainment is such a thing, and now it's not hard now to be an entertainer and an entrepreneur. You can make TikToks, you can do Reels, you can do YouTube, and you look at some of these folks who are now younger and they're trending now, and now they bypass some of those other processes, but those are also anomalies. So before, when I was growing up, it was basketball, it was football, it was maybe a vice president or someone in government at least. But now it's like you got little kids that are millionaires from streaming on YouTube. So I think the access and the exposure has made it harder for people to really hone in on what they care about and even put in the work to see how that can be possible.
So I'm going to say something. You bring up a very important point. I'm going to say something, then you piggyback off of it. Here's my take on what you just talked about, and those of you that are watching. And this is, and I want to encourage you out there, if you have a young man, young black man, or whatever color he is, but certainly brown and black young men specifically in your sphere, meaning a nephew or a son or a godchild, send this link to them and let them watch this podcast. Hopefully, by the time we get through, it will help inspire them some way, some form, some fashion. All right. I think, yes, you can have a shot at becoming popular, making money through TikTok and this kind of thing. I think the challenge is, at the end of the day, policies, procedures, CEOs, and COOs all run basically the world. And in order to do that, that still requires education. And I think the reason why, as far as the statistics are concerned and the percentages are concerned, and I don't have actual stats in front of me, but the reason why black men don't end up in the higher percentage in these areas is because we refuse to get educated.
And it's funny you say that. I don't disagree. And I definitely think you think about now versus back in the day when you didn't have access to Khan Academy. If you don't know what Khan Academy is, look that up. Google. You can learn a lot of things on Google and YouTube. To be educated, people just think, go to school, right? That's one aspect of education, but there's a lot of folks who learn how to become an entrepreneur and learn about business and learn about ways in which they can start their own by educating themselves and actually take pride in that, because there's a lot of free tools available. But you're right. I think the education piece, there's the traditional and formal piece, which is you go to school, you go to college, you pick a major, you get an internship, you get a job, you ascend into leadership, and then you have impact and influence and resources. That's one traditional way. Another avenue that also is becoming something that's attractive to young people now is I have a skill, I have an interest, and what do I have at my disposal that I can take pride in to learn how to become knowledgeable and an expert on that and ascend into spaces that way. But you're right. I think that at the core of it, it is education in multiple ways outside of just the traditional. And I'm an educator. So for me to say that, like, I'm taking some of the people away from this idea of formal education, but formal education plus whatever's available is still a win, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't see it like you're taking away from it. I see it as you're saying, hey, this and that. Yeah. You know, so it's not even, because at the end of the day, I might have went to school at Lee University, but I studied on the streets of after getting the education. I was talking to one of our leaders here at the church. He's working with Google, and he said, you know, he could get a lot of people jobs, particularly brothers, in particular athletes. So former athletes, even professional athletes, when he was working with Amazon and different ones. But a lot of these positions required some level of education.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's the part too where formal education is something that people can say at least there's a way to kind of vet people across the board, right? And the way, that's why I value it.
So break that down a little bit, because I don't think people understand that is literally the system of corporate America. Right. Because people say, oh, why you got to go to school and why you got to, they don't realize that paper opens doors. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and where, you know, with some of my young college students that feel like they are in spaces where they're taking classes and doing things that don't really add value and the degree doesn't mean anything, I say, well, do you have another way between, you know, to vet people between the ages of 18 and 22 or 23 for something that they've been exposed to? And if your answer is no, then there has to be some sort of standard to set for a skilled trade. So an education will give you a number of different experiences that a company can say, I know at least this person has been exposed to these things. That gets you an interview. Now, when you get the interview, you get into the space, and now it's your job now, and the lights come on, to say, here is what I understand about what I learned. Here's how I applied it. Here's how it connects to my interests and passions, and here's what I can do with that. Yeah. And so I don't underestimate, nor do I kind of devalue this formal education, but I also think, just like anything, and I go back to this Kobe statement of, you know, you got to put the work in. He gets up 3 o'clock in the morning, got, you know, bless his soul, 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time somebody else is getting up, he's already had 3 and 4 workouts. Yeah. So if you take an education and you show up and you do the bare minimum, then of course your degree not going to matter, because when you get your interview and it comes time for you to shine, you don't know nothing. It's not going to do anything for you. And then I get one better. And so the other thing I tell my young people that I work with is that the things that you're doing, you have to think about it where it can exist through other people's structures, but what are you learning that you can take and put into your own space? Yeah. Because these things are transferable. If you're learning accounting and business and policies and procedures and marketing, and you're doing that only in someone's structure, then you aren't using the skills that you have been given and that you pay for to your advantage. Yeah. And so as you're doing those things, that's a lab for you to really test out your skills. Yeah. And that's a portfolio. Yeah. And then you can start testing out what it's like to do that. Well, I guess I can do a consulting thing on the side. I can start an LLC. I can provide my services to someone else. Yeah. And now you've taken a degree that it could be a paper degree. And you've used it as a gateway, and then you use it as another gateway to become someone who can create their own lane and be an entrepreneur.
So you still got to, bottom line, you still got to do the work no matter what. Education, it becomes the vehicle to get it done.
Yep.
Let's push the envelope a little further. I want to stay here. I'm enjoying this podcast, but I think this is the first, no, seriously, I think it's the first time we've actually ever kind of gone this far with, one, education, the topic of education. Number two, specifically to the black man, all right? And especially our young men and our youth that are out there, because I really think it's one thing to sit back and watch the statistics on what's happening in our school systems, the dropout rates, all that kind of stuff, and then and it's a pattern where they're ending up in the system and all that kind of stuff. And it's a whole nother thing when you actually are bold enough to talk about it and open it up. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm not concerned about young white men and brothers. We are concerned about all our brothers, no matter what color your skin is. But I am saying that as a black man, I see the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. And it's staggering what we're dealing with. The thing, and you can expound on this as well. Let's go here for a second. One of the things I think that people forget about formal education and what it means to be educated or what it means to read is the ideology of expanding the muscle of the brain. And I don't think kids understand that the brain is a muscle. And just like you have to, you work out, I work out, just like you have to work out every muscle in your body in order for it to get stronger or bigger, it has to have resistance. Kids don't understand that if you're not constantly challenging the muscle of the brain by retaining multiple streams of information at one time, which is what college is, it's forced reading, and then the exams, can you remember everything we just taught you that semester kind of thing? If you can't do that, then the muscle is weak, meaning you are not as smart as you think, or you are, no disrespect, but ignorant, which only means a lack of knowledge, all right? Keep going for a second. Then you get placed into these corporate settings or these business settings, or you're trying to run your own business, chicken shack, run your own Amazon store, whatever the case. A lot of information coming at you, and you ain't never had to deal with that before. That's going to stress you out.
Yeah, and I would go even, one of the things that I study, and I'm shameless plug, I'm getting my doctorate right now at the University of Miami. Yeah, go ahead, hit one of those. Yep. That's the best one you got, and you got nothing better than that one? Hey, there you go.
They really liked you.
Yeah, but now I'm studying this idea of, perceptions of leadership for minoritized Gen Z students. Because what you talked about a generation that the way in which they use their muscle is multiple things at one time. I have leadership team that they'll be doing an email, but they're listening to a podcast and they'll be on their phone. And so there's so many different types of things that are being absorbed into their body at one time. Their body is doing too many different workouts at one time. And because of that, they can't really focus on a core set of skills. They can't retain the main points of the do it now chapter. And I think that is something that
you don't become an expert in.
No, you don't. And I think the way in which they absorb it is very transactional and timely and quick. And so when I talk to some of my team and young people about what it is that they're trying to learn, I say, how can you master? How can you really learn if you have too many sources of things happening? I can't do a bench press and an arm curl at the same time. I can't do that. It just doesn't work. I can't do squats and, you don't look crazy. Like I get there's Olympic lifting, but there's still parts of the body that you're working out one at a time, and it all comes together.
And any professional person that's working out will tell you focus on that one object at a time. I heard somewhere, read somewhere, I'm not sure, you can confirm or deny or just say you don't know, but I heard somewhere that if you write stuff down, it registers more than if you just see somebody else do it, or even if you just do it on your phone.
Yeah, and I will give students I work with credit and young people, they do journal. And I think the other part of that is not just so much how much technology is being absorbed, how much information is being given, but they really do have a respect for the old school way of actually putting pen to paper. I remember back in the day, I used to have to do them cursive exercises over and over and over again.
Do you know they don't teach cursive no more?
They don't.
Did y'all know? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I just found that.
I'm still good at it, but I'm telling you, I remember those lines. You had to keep doing that over and over and over again.
So what do people do that want their kids to write cursive?
Nah, y'all can't answer that question.
That is crazy. So how are they supposed to sign their name? How do kids learn how to sign their name?
Well, PDF has a digital signature now. So you can actually write your name, and they will give you a cursive
They'll give you-
signature. That's right, and that's your signature.
Listen, church, if you're going to be famous, you got to come up with your own way of autographing your name. You hear me? So you better figure it out and how to do it. All right, I want to talk about why education and why the idea of leadership is not perceived as cool in the black community.
Education and leadership?
Yeah, I honestly, I was speaking to Attorney Victor last week. If you if you didn't catch the podcast, go back and look at it. He's self-made pretty much, you know, about 33 years old, and already has a thriving an attorney firm here, him and his partner.
Nice.
And I mean, just killing it, about 60 employees, this kind of thing. Wow. And now why did I bring him up? I brought him up because I don't know what. If I think of it, I'll come back to it. But I brought him up for some reason. But I think that, you know. I know why I brought it up, because I said to him, why didn't you just continue? Because when I met him, he worked at a firm. You understand? And then he said to me, "Hey, listen, man, I'm gonna start my own firm." And I said, "Okay." Then he showed me the little storefront of the little room that they're gonna rent to start their firm in. And then 3 years later, he done had the whole wing of a building. And if you go down 17th Street and 17th Street and Causeway, you see Demesman and Dover and Demesman, and it's his whole wing. And I said to him, "How did you know to do that? What motivated you to do that?" You know, he said to me, I thought he was going to say money. I thought he was going to say, you know, cars, big house, this and the other, vacation home, taking trips. He said leadership. He said, "I knew I always wanted to be a leader. And because of that, that motivated me to get educated. That motivated me to be in a place of power, be in a place of financial wealth, to be able to help people, give jobs, et cetera, et cetera." Yeah. So I think there's a problem here. I think that there is a lack of desire, and I could be wrong, and this is why you're here, the younger, for our people, you know, the young black men. I don't think they see leadership. Something's not connecting.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. And that's a great story, by the way. I think when I think about leadership, I think of two different versions of that, right? I think sometimes we conflate the two. I think there is one thing to be a leader by title and position, right? Okay. And I think there's another version of a leader that means that you carry yourself and you have a conviction about you where you are going to do whatever you can intrinsically and extrinsically to show that you are invested in other people. Because I can argue that a leader could be somebody outside that has no title and position, but has a way in which to inspire people. It could be the guy in the neighborhood. It could be there was guys that was at the YMCA that never had a role in the company that was the most influential leaders that I was around. And so when I think about leadership, there is an importance in having representation within title leadership within the highest levels, because that means that we have a chance to really let the organization from the top down permeate with some of those values. And then with that being said, so I can see why someone would want to go on their own and actually create something that means something and ascend to the top. I tell young people this perfect example. I used to send students to internships, and I would send them to hospitals and health systems and other places, and they would come back to us and say, "Man, Mr. Clarke, man, this is, you know, they're making me dress this way. They're making me come to work on time. They're asking me all these questions." And I sat back and I said, you walked into an organization as an intern. I said, "You think that you're going to walk in because your presence is here and you're talented, that you're going to get these people who've been doing this for a long time to all of a sudden change that?" I said, "Here's my challenge for you. You ascend yourself to leadership and you change the culture."
That's good.
Or you ascend yourself to leadership and then you take that capital and then you create something that parallels it, because we need perspective. And so when I think of leadership, we need to be within these spaces because the people that we want to support and care about are going to be in those spaces too, right? And the second part of that is like what do you believe in? What are your values? So as a leader, I may not be the CEO of the company, but within my power and position as a director, I can embody myself as a leader and say, regardless of what scope, budget, scale, influence I have, I know what I'm going to carry myself, and I know what the expectations that you can have in me and I have in you. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're giving people, impressionable people, young people, vulnerable people perspective. Yeah. And that's the best chance, I think, young people that don't have the chance to see something perspective. Because we talked about it. Like, why do we fixate ourselves? Why do some of our young men fixate ourselves on certain things? They don't have enough perspective. And when you get perspective, then you can say, yeah, that's cool, but I know what that is as well. Yeah. And that fits me more than that fits me.
Well, you hit the word perspective or perception, however you want to look at it, but the idea, and then you I love where you went with leadership. I wouldn't have went that way. Yeah. So that's why you're here. Amen. but you talk about, because when you start talking about leadership, you're really talking about something unique, right? Mm-hmm. Because real leadership is doing something uniquely to the entity of the person, right? And when you start talking about, okay, a black guy that's a rapper, is that unique? A black guy that's a ball player or trying to be a ball player, is that unique? A black guy owning a team, a black guy keeping the score and the statistics of that team, a black guy being an agent, a black guy being a marketer for the NBA and whatnot. Now you start going into unique categories, and that's where I think that our young men and those alike ought to start saying, am I an original? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this original what I'm doing? Or am I basically mimicking what I said? Which I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to go here. I'm really going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble.
Don't say back.
I am a first-generation American. You are a second-generation American. Right. So in some ways, we can sit here and talk like we talk, but that's because your grandfather, my father, didn't play. Neither did my mama. My mama, your grandma.
See, I can't laugh because I'm still scared.
Exactly. And then your mama didn't play, and your daddy didn't play. So you come from a lineage of to where we're not, quote unquote, the typical black American, so to speak. And I think because of that, I think sometimes it's a little difficult to create the perception or this ideology that you are very unique, and it's important that you're unique. A lot of American-born lineages, white or black, have a tendency to fall in the general consensus of something. Mm-hmm. And this is not a situation, in my opinion, that's just significant to the black community. I grew up around enough white people to know all throughout my college years, and if you took my personal friends down the middle, it'll fall right there even as far as white friends, black friends, or whatever the case may be. So I can tell you that this is in both communities. American people, period, have a tendency to follow the masses rather than their own leadership path.
Yeah, and again, I think, you hit it right on the head. Like
that's our culture.
I think that is. And the thing I also think, you talk about perception, I really appreciate you saying that, because when I think about perception, I also think about the perception of your experiences. Because here's the deal. When somebody look at you and look at me, they don't understand our lineage. They don't understand our upbringing and socialization. They don't understand our faith. They don't understand our struggles. They see a black man. And so sometimes an assumption can be made based on what you appear, that you, as an educated, articulate, successful, service-oriented man, that there's a disassociation with struggle and struggle and challenges, right? And so, the thing I really appreciate about you as somebody who's a leader in our community, and has always been, is that you've always made yourself available to be vulnerable, right? And open, because people can make assumptions about the things who you are and the things that you have. And not to go into the podcast for this, but definitely, like, folks have done that. There's a lot of struggle and things that come with that. But we know our heritage and our lineage, and how, granddaddy didn't play and grandma didn't play, but people that don't know us. And so we can, just as much as we know that, we also can be lumped into this broader social group of American-born black men. And when you can go down, when there's police officers, when there's other people, they can't distinct the difference, between right? The two. No, and we make assumptions about that. And I think that's important, because I think as a leader, people are going to make assumptions. Like, bias is the thing. Unconscious or conscious bias, people have it. People carry it. I love the fact that we also can be proud of who we are, unapologetic about who we are, service-oriented, but know that people will, on the strength of their own bias, make assumptions about you. And it's your job, it's not your job, but you understand that, and you still create spaces for accountability, vulnerability, because that allows people to see we human.
That's where
the fight. Care.
Yeah, that's where the fight is. That's where the fight is. You got this constant fight of, first off, you're trying to figure it out, because if you are a leader, that means you're blazing trails you you've never been down before, and which means you're going to get in situations that you're going to be in for the first time. And by the way, that's what success is all about. Success is about rising to areas, atmospheres, and rooms that you've never been in before. Success is all about uncomfortability. As a matter of fact, your comfort is uncomfortability. And if you are comfortable, chances are you're probably not down a successful path. So that's the first thing. So you're constantly trying to articulate what it is that you're doing in the room.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the second thing is you have to fight the ideology of what people think.
Yep.
You're doing it. Who are you? Because like you said, they don't know. They just see the color of the skin, whatever the case may be. They don't know what you had to do to get there.
Yeah.
So, and then and if you're not careful, you have to sometimes help people understand. You see my eyes? You have to help people understand who you are.
I'm surprised you didn't hit a button on that one.
Yeah, I don't know that I have.
What's the worst one you got? That's good. That's a good one.
Don't play. Don't take the meekness for weakness. All right, so tell the people who you are. You work now. Your degree is in what?
So I have a bachelor's degree in justice and public policy. That's one. I have a minor in health education. And then I have a master's in public administration. And then now I'm pursuing my doctorate of educational leadership. So,
and right now you hold the position at University of Miami, one of the dopest schools, by the way, in the nation, around the world.
That's right. Okay.
And your position, I never know your official title.
Don't mess it up. I got it.
That's why I didn't try.
So I'm the director in the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, which is a big role at Miami if you don't know, if you're listening from all across the world, obviously Miami is a very diverse melting pot. But
international mecca.
Oh, my goodness. And University of Miami, we have about 19,000 students that go there, but close to 50% of our students identify as multicultural, which means that half the student body, if they wanted to, can get services and supports and needs from my office under my leadership. So it's a big scope and scale for a role. And it's important.
I never even thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of intimidating.
A little bit.
And you're not that old. So for you to be in that position, what do you say to somebody that's watching you and saying to you, I wasn't. Okay, I'm going to bring this up. Let's talk about a little vulnerability going on right here. I wasn't that smart growing up in high school. I felt like high school was the first awareness that I had of like, I'm not particularly an honor student or AP student or whatever. Because in high school they start separating you and you get AP classes and all that. And I finally graduated to an AP class like my last year in high school, and it was in history. That's why when you come back with history, I got you covered. You can't play me with history. Anything else, I can't help you. So I wasn't that smart, but I did find, and you could either concur or whatever. I found that the further I went in my education, the smarter I got, or the better I got at education. Yeah. So I didn't do that well in high school, but I kicked butt in college. Not so much the first year, but by the time I get to the second, the third, and the fourth year of college, I'm killing it.
Yeah. Well, you talk about perceptions. I don't think I ever took an AP class, to be honest with you. and one further, and that's why I say like this idea of this perception of you. I can tell somebody I'm a doctorate candidate at a private institution that's well known across the country, and I graduated high school at a 1.9.
Wow.
That's right.
So
to God be the glory.
To God be the glory, because I think I'm right there with you. Whatever the lowest you can have and get across that stage, I'm almost sure that's what I had. That's been a minute ago. So I just saw a post the other day, by the way. It said 1993 was 30 years ago. And then it said again, this is how you know you're old. 1993, they just kept saying it, was 30 years ago, right? And I thought it was hilarious. But here's the kicker to that stupid post. I graduated from college in 1990.
Hey, I tell you what.
That's my college year.
I got a group on Facebook that's planning our 20-year high school reunion, and I almost took myself off that. I said, no, hold up now. It can't be 20 years, but it goes by fast.
It goes by fast.
Yeah.
It goes by. So, all right, talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about the perception. So let's talk to somebody, anybody that's out there watching this. This is where you got to tune in. All my young people, we're just about to wrap this up. We got a couple more minutes left. This is where you want to zero in. Chris, really dig deep here. Talk about what it means to be a below average student and climbing out of that in making your way to a significant position, leadership position at one of the top universities in America as a black young man. What do you say to the high schooler right now that's struggling with their GPA, that's struggling with reading, struggling with the idea of staying focused when you're in a class and all that kind of stuff, constantly being distracted by girls and distracted by, the peer pressure of being hood and, being a thug versus being a nerd or whatever the case? Talk about it.
Yeah, and again, back to my point about, vulnerability and transparency. Like, this is not about, anything other than making sure that this is, what you see is what you get. I'm very, very clear. But, the reason I was able to even graduate at a 1.9 is because I got into high school and my school was so large that I got lost in the cracks and never was an unintelligent young man. I just didn't value the education the same way, and it wasn't people that invested in ensuring that I got my education. And I can tell you, as a junior in high school, your older sister sat down with my guidance counselor, and she basically said, hey, he's a junior in high school, but he got freshman credits.
Wow.
He ain't going to make it. And I remember sitting down in that chair, and she looked at me, and she said, what you going to do? And I had to make a decision. She couldn't fix it for me. And from my junior year to my 12th grade year, I went to class from 7 o'clock in the morning to about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because I had to go from class to 7 to 3, and then I had to take adult education classes every night. But I said, if I get one more chance to make this right, I ain't never doing this again.
Wow.
And finally, I got my GPA up to a place where I could get into college on a bridge program.
Wow.
Because I played football. And the second chance that I got was the most refreshing thing. But here's the thing that I talk about when it is leadership. I know why my experiences were what they were in high school. But here's the deal. As I continue to go into the next space and do different things, I never thought about the Chris that was lost in the cracks.
Come on.
So I dedicated my education. I dedicated the time that I spent to provide perspective in a lonely class, in a class where the majority of my peers did not have the same upbringing as me. They didn't have the same perspectives as me. But it was important that I valued that education. And when I went into my profession, I said, I cannot forget the path that I almost could have taken if somebody didn't invest in me and give me that ultimatum. And so I took a very bad situation and I turned it into something good because I committed to doing it. And it wasn't easy work. And now, as I am a doctor, I can say, when students talk to me about GPA and other things, I can tell you the difference is someone cared.
Yeah.
And I cared enough.
Yeah.
And I cared enough now that I can be in this position to say, if I can do it, you can do it, but I'm going to be in this position of leadership so I can tell you, as you look back, that I'm going to make this easier for you.
Yeah.
And that's what you're supposed to do. And I think about, you talk about it coming off MLK week in some of these spaces, we sitting on the shoulders of giants who had way less and did way more. Their lives were taken for them. Taken for things that we take for granted sometimes.
Basic things.
And so who am I to sit here and say, as a second chance, and you give me another opportunity to pursue my education at a time where education wasn't a given, that I'm going to sit here and just sit with my legs crossed and say, that's your battle. No.
Yeah.
I committed my life, my professional, my spiritual, and my philanthropic life to make sure that whoever it is that may have gotten lost in the cracks, that I can be a part of the solution, not just with helping the students, but helping systems get better. Because the systems that these students go into create opportunities to make those things easy. It makes it easy for a young person to say, I'm out. Drop out. And then when you drop out, then what? There's no alternatives. And then we get into other things. And then now it's at the mercy of the other people that's around. And I chose that. And I always tell people when I work with them, young people or not, I say, you can't pay it back to me, pay it forward.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So that's the short version. But I really think it starts with vulnerability. You can't have that story if I can't be transparent and not sit up here and say, well, I'm about to be Dr. Clarke. No, I graduated 1.8.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where it started, but that's not where it ended. And you got to want it at the end of the day. You got to want better. I could say the same thing. I would say ditto to my story and probably many stories out there. You got to want it. And if you want it bad enough, I believe it'll change for your life. That's our time. Thank you, nephew. You did good.
That's all right. Yeah. Maybe I'll be back.
You'll be back. Love y'all. Hey, folks, thank you for joining our Do It Now podcast. I hope what was said today helped you, challenged you, and caused you to live your best life right now. Do me a huge favor. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I want you to share and like and subscribe to our channel. We want to share this message of now with every and anybody we can possibly get it to, and you can help us do that. Would you do it for me? And don't forget to live your best life now. We'll see you next time.